The wind howled across the rusted metal beams of the abandoned mining colony, its low groan echoing through the hollow corridors like a ghost refusing to be forgotten. Mira, a young engineer in her late 20s, moved carefully through the dimly lit hallways, her boots crunching against the dust-covered floor. Most of the workers had long since left. Some transferred, others simply vanished, but she remained, assigned to maintenance and repair work on the colony's outdated systems. The outpost, once a bustling hub of resource extraction, had been left to decay after a failed experiment in deep core drilling triggered a seismic collapse. Now, it stood as a relic of human ambition, a place where machines groaned under the weight of neglect, and where shadows clung to the walls, like memories refusing to fade. Mira had always been drawn to broken things. As a child, she would take apart her father's old tools just to see how they worked, and as an adult, she found herself in places like this, where technology had failed, where systems had been left incomplete, and where she could piece them back together. The colony's control room was her usual destination, where she spent hours rerouting power to keep the lights on, and the air filters running. But tonight, something was different. The usual hum of the generators was quieter, almost hesitant, as if the outpost itself was holding its breath. She made her way toward the old containment sector, where the last failed experiment had been sealed away. The area was mostly off-limits now, marked with warning signs and reinforced doors that hadn't been opened in years. Still, she had been assigned to check the power grid running through the underground chambers, and she wasn't one to ignore orders. The hallway stretched before her, lined with flickering lights and rusted pipes that groaned with every step she took. The air was cold, stale, and carried the faint scent of damp metal. As she reached the final corridor, her breath caught. A low splash echoed from the chamber ahead, followed by the unmistakable sound of movement. She froze. The outpost was supposed to be empty, save for the occasional malfunctioning drone or automated system. No one should be in this part of the facility. Slowly, she stepped forward, her hand resting on the emergency tool at her belt. The door to the chamber was ajar, a thin line of darkness stretching between the metal panels. She pushed it open, and the dim glow of residual energy panels cast eerie shadows across the room. There, in the center of the large drained containment pool, something stirred. It was small, barely more than a child, its skin reflecting the faint light like polished stone. Its eyes were wide, dark, and filled with something she couldn't quite place. Fear, perhaps, or confusion. Mira took a cautious step closer, her mind racing. This wasn't part of any experiment she had read about. This wasn't supposed to be here. And yet, here it was, struggling to rise, its body wrapped in old, torn fabric, its neck marked with a strange, glowing insignia. Mira's breath came shallow as she took another step forward, her pulse quickening. The creature, no, the child, stared up at her, its dark eyes reflecting the dim light like polished obsidian. Its skin shimmered faintly, a smooth, iridescent surface that seemed almost liquid in the right angle. It looked fragile, barely more than a whisper of a being, but the way it moved, slowly, deliberately, as if testing the air, suggested something more complex beneath the surface. The child tried to sit up, its limbs trembling as it pushed against the cold metallic floor of the drained containment chamber. Mira hesitated, her instincts warring between caution and the overwhelming need to help. She had seen test subjects before, failed prototypes, abandoned experiments, but none like this. This wasn't a machine, nor was it a creature born from Earth soil. It was something else entirely. She crouched a few feet away, keeping her movements slow and non-threatening. "Hey," she said softly, her voice barely carrying over the low hum of the failing energy panels. "It's okay." The child flinched, its gaze darting to the cracked ceiling, then back to her. It didn't speak, but something in its posture shifted. Less fear, more uncertainty. Mira glanced around the room. The containment pool was dry, its once functioning filtration systems long since fallen into disrepair. The walls bore scorch marks from past system failures, and the air was thick with the scent of rust and decay. Whatever had been locked away here was supposed to remain forgotten. So why was this child here? Why now? She reached into her tool belt and pulled out a small thermal blanket, offering it with both hands. The child stared at it, then at her, as if trying to decipher whether she was friend or foe. Slowly, hesitantly, it reached out, fingers brushing the fabric before pulling back. Mira didn't move. She let the silence stretch, giving it time to adjust. Finally, the child wrapped the blanket around its shoulders, shivering slightly as it did. Mira exhaled, realizing she had been holding her breath. "I don't know who you are," she murmured, "but you're not supposed to be here." The child tilted its head, a gesture almost too human to ignore. It looked at her, then at the glowing insignia on its neck, the same symbol that had been etched into the walls of the chamber. A sudden movement behind her made her spin around. The door had shifted, the rusted hinges creaking as if something, or someone, had tried to enter. Mira's hand tightened around the emergency tool at her belt. She wasn't alone here. Someone else had been watching, waiting. She turned back to the child, who now stood, clutching the blanket tightly. "We need to move," she whispered, urgency threading through her voice. "No." The child didn't argue. It simply nodded, its large, dark eyes locking onto hers, and together they stepped into the unknown. Mira led the child through the dim corridors of the outpost, her pulse still racing. She had no idea who, or what, this being was, but she couldn't leave it here. The facility was too dangerous, too exposed. If someone else had been watching, she needed to disappear before they came back. She steered them toward the maintenance wing, a section of the colony rarely used since the collapse. The air was thick with dust, the machines long dormant, but she knew of a hidden space that might offer them shelter. She pushed open a rusted panel behind a row of storage crates, revealing a narrow crawlway that led to an old tech bay buried beneath the main structure. The child hesitated, its gaze flickering between the darkness and her, but after a moment, it followed. Inside, the room was cramped but intact. The lights flickered to life as Mira tapped a power relay, casting a dim glow over shelves of obsolete tools and half-working components. She had spent years fixing broken machines, and this space, though neglected, still held the remnants of that purpose. A rusted workbench, a few scattered wires, and a salvaged console that still had some limited functionality. It wasn't much, but it was shelter. The child sat on the cold metal floor, clutching the thermal blanket tightly. Mira crouched beside it, watching its movements carefully. It wasn't just afraid, it was wary, as if every sound, every shift of air was a potential threat. She reached into her pack and pulled out a small flashlight, switching it on to illuminate the space more fully. The child's eyes widened at the sudden brightness, but it didn't recoil. Instead, it tilted its head, studying the beam as if trying to understand its purpose. Mira pulled out a portable scanner and hesitated before activating it. She wasn't sure what she would find, but she needed answers. The scanner hummed to life, and she ran it over the child's form. The data was erratic, fluctuating as if the being's very existence defied standard readings. The insignia on its neck pulsed faintly, but the scanner couldn't identify it. She turned to the child. "What's your name?" she asked, keeping her voice gentle. The child blinked, then placed a hand over its chest, mimicking her. But no name followed. Instead, it pointed to the insignia on its neck, and then to the walls of the chamber, where the same symbol had been scorched into the metal. Mira frowned. "That's not a name," she murmured. "That's a label." The child's expression didn't change, but something in its eyes flickered, a recognition, maybe even sorrow. It looked down at the floor, its fingers tracing patterns in the dust. Mira watched, fascinated. The symbols it drew were strange, flowing and organic, like the movement of water against stone. She reached out, copying one onto her own palm, but the child shook its head. It tapped its own chest again, then pointed to the symbols, as if trying to explain something vital. Mira's mind raced. The child wasn't just lost, It was something else. Something that had been contained, hidden away. And now, it was trying to communicate, to make her understand. Over the following days, she brought supplies, water, food, spare parts. The child remained cautious, but slowly, trust grew. It mimicked her speech, repeating simple words with a quiet, careful voice. It learned to hold a cup, to drink without hesitation. And when Mira spoke of the world beyond the colony, of the sky and the stars, the child listened with wide, curious eyes. But something else was happening too. The insignia on its neck, once a dull, steady glow, began to pulse with a strange rhythm. And when the child touched the metal walls, faint ripples of light followed its fingertips, like echoes of something long buried. Mira didn't know what it meant, but she could feel it. The child was waking up, remembering something beyond the outpost's rusted halls. And whatever it had been before, it was not just a lost creature. It was something powerful. The first sign of their presence was the silence. Mira had always known the outpost to be filled with the low hum of failing machinery, the occasional creak of shifting metal, and the distant groan of wind against the colony's rusted outer shell. But now, all of it had vanished, as if the facility itself had been muted by something unseen. She tightened her grip on the child's hand and led them deeper into the hidden tech bay, her breath shallow as she scanned the shadows. Then came the sound, boots, heavy and deliberate, striking against the metal floor. Mira froze. The child did too, its dark eyes widening as it pressed itself against the wall, its body trembling. She moved quickly, shutting the door as silently as she could, then pressed her ear against the cold surface. The footsteps were growing closer. She had seen them before. The Dominion Enforcement Unit, mercenaries hired by the corporations that once ran the colony. They weren't scientists or engineers. They were hunters, tracking down lost assets, failed experiments, anything valuable that had slipped through the cracks. And now, they were here. She turned to the child. "Stay quiet," she whispered, her fingers tightening around its small hand. The child nodded, eyes locked onto hers, understanding the urgency without needing words. Mira crouched beside the console, activating the outpost's old surveillance system. The screen flickered, then displayed grainy footage of the main corridor. 7 figures in black armor stood just outside the tech bay's entrance, their visors glowing faintly as they scanned the area. One of them tapped a device on his wrist, and the screen distorted for a moment before stabilizing. They were using a bioscanner. Mira's stomach twisted. The child's energy signature, whatever it was, would stand out like a beacon against the otherwise lifeless structure of the outpost. She needed to move, but the hallway outside was already blocked. A voice crackled through the corridor's intercom. "This facility is under Dominion jurisdiction. Any unauthorized personnel will be detained." The words were cold, mechanical. No warning, no negotiation. Just a statement of control. Mira turned to the child, her mind racing. "We can't let them find you," she murmured. The child's fingers twitched. Then it reached out and pressed its palm against the console. The screen flickered again, but this time, the bioscan data glitched, distorted lines, unreadable signals. The child's eyes glowed faintly, and for the first time Mira saw something beyond fear in its expression. There was intent. She realized the child wasn't just hiding. It was interfering with the Dominion systems. The footsteps stopped just outside the door. Mira held her breath. The Dominion agents exchanged words in low tones. Then one of them tapped his wrist device again. "Signal interference," the voice muttered. "Possible malfunction." Another voice responded, sharper. "We'll check anyway." Mira's heart pounded. She had seconds before they forced their way in. She looked at the child, then at the rusted maintenance hatch beneath the workbench. "There," she whispered, kneeling to lift the panel. The child hesitated, then scrambled down, disappearing into the crawl space below. Mira quickly replaced the hatch and stepped back just as the door hissed open. The agents entered, their visors scanning the room. Mira forced herself to stand still, her hands at her sides. The leader, a tall figure with a silver insignia on his shoulder, stepped forward. "Maintenance technician," he said, voice flat. "You're the only one registered here." Mira nodded. "Just doing my job," she said, keeping her voice even. "Checking the systems before they shut down completely." The agent's gaze flickered toward the console, where the scan data was still distorted. "This area was sealed after the collapse," he said. "Why are you here?" Mira shrugged. "Orders," she said simply. "They want anything salvageable brought back online." The agent studied her for a long moment, then tapped his wrist again. "We'll be running our own diagnostics. You'll stay here until we're done." Mira forced a nod. "Fine." The agent spread out, scanning the room, running their hands over the rusted shelves, the broken equipment, the dust-covered floor. The child was hidden, but Mira knew it wouldn't stay that way for long. The Dominion had resources, technology, and no hesitation when it came to retrieving what they considered theirs. And if they found the child, they wouldn't hesitate to take it back. As the Dominion agents continued their search, Mira felt a shift in the air, a subtle, electric tension that made the hairs on her neck stand on end. The child, hidden beneath the maintenance hatch, seemed to sense it too. Its small form pressed against the cold metal, eyes wide and alert, the glow from its skin pulsing in rhythm with the distant hum of machinery. It wasn't just fear that radiated from the child now. It was something deeper, more ancient, like the stirring of a long-dormant force finally remembering its purpose. Then, the console flickered. Mira's eyes darted to the screen, watching as the distorted scan data stabilized, then shifted. The symbols that had once been erratic now formed a pattern, flowing, intricate, like the movement of water across stone. The child's hand had been resting against the hatch, and now, faint ripples of light traced the walls, spreading outward in delicate waves. It was communicating, not with words, but with something more profound, something woven into its very being. She turned back to the Dominion agents, who were still scanning the room, unaware of the change beneath their feet. If they found the child, they wouldn't just take it back, they would use it. That insignia on its neck wasn't just a tracker. It was a control mechanism, a leash to something far more powerful than they realized. Mira needed answers. Once the agents moved to the far side of the tech bay, she crouched beside the hatch and whispered, "Come out, now." The child obeyed, slipping from the crawl space with a grace that defied its frail appearance. It pressed its palm against the console again, and the screen responded, displaying a series of fragmented images. Mira's breath caught. The first image showed a planet, vast, blue, and covered in endless waves. The second depicted a structure, not unlike the containment pool, but far more intricate, carved from white stone and surrounded by glowing currents of energy. The final image sent a chill through her. Figures like the child, but larger, their bodies radiating light, standing before a massive gate suspended in the ocean's depths. The same gate the child had drawn in the dust. "You're from there," Mira murmured, staring at the screen. The child nodded, its eyes reflecting the images like a memory returning. Then the console beeped again, and more data streamed in. Files marked as restricted, remnants of the Dominion's old research. Mira scanned the text, her fingers trembling as she pieced together fragments of information. The child wasn't just a test subject. It was part of something far greater, Project Aegeon, a classified initiative designed to harness an alien species capable of manipulating deep-sea environments. The goal had been to use them to terraform oceanic planets, to create habitable zones where none had existed before. But something had gone wrong. The project had been shut down, its subjects either terminated or lost. Except, this one hadn't been lost. It had been hidden. The child stepped closer, pressing its palm against the screen. The data shifted again, revealing a final image, a schematic of the containment pool, overlaid with a single word that pulsed with eerie light. "Key." Mira's pulse pounded in her ears. The pool wasn't just a holding chamber. It was a lock. And the child wasn't a prisoner. It was the mechanism that could open it. The child's eyes met hers, and for the first time it spoke. Not in words, but in a soft hum that resonated through the air, like the echo of a forgotten song. The console responded, the symbols shifting again, forming a single phrase before the screen flickered and went dark. "Return the vessel." Mira swallowed hard. "You're not just a runaway," she whispered. "You're the reason they built this place." The child's expression was unreadable, but the glow in its skin deepened, pulsing with a rhythm that felt almost like a heartbeat. The Dominion wasn't just looking for a missing experiment. They were searching for something they had lost control over. And if they found it again, they wouldn't let it slip through their fingers. The tech bay door hissed open once more, and Mira barely had time to react before the Dominion leader stepped inside, his visor locking onto her with cold precision. "We found something," he said. "You're hiding it." Mira's mind raced. The child was standing behind her, silent but alert. The console was dark, but the energy in the air had changed. The Dominion knew. The leader took a step closer, scanning the room. "Where is it?" Mira clenched her fists, heart hammering. She had a choice: hand over the child and let the Dominion take control, or fight for something she barely understood, but knew was worth protecting. She met his gaze and lied. "There's nothing here but broken machines." The Dominion agent studied her for a long moment, then tapped his wrist device. "We'll see." The tech bay's lights flickered. The child's glow intensified. The battle for the child, and for whatever lay beneath the colony, was about to begin. The tech bay's lights dimmed as the Dominion agent activated a deeper scan, sweeping the room with a pulse of energy that sent a shiver through Mira's bones. The child, still hidden behind her, pressed its palm against the cold floor, and the faint glow in its skin flared. The ripples of light that had once traced the walls now surged upward, crawling along the rusted metal like veins of energy reawakening. The agent's visor flickered, his screen momentarily glitching as the child's presence disrupted the Dominion systems. "This isn't a malfunction," he muttered, adjusting his scanner. "Something's interfering." Mira forced herself to stay calm, but her mind was racing. If the Dominion managed to override the interference, they would pinpoint the child's location in seconds. She needed to act fast. Then, the console behind her sparked to life again, displaying a new sequence of symbols. The child's eyes widened, and it took a hesitant step forward, its small fingers tracing the glowing patterns. It wasn't just reacting to the machines, it was communicating with them. The Dominion agents shifted, their hands tightening around their weapons. "Step aside," the leader ordered, his voice devoid of hesitation. "We're retrieving what belongs to us." Mira didn't move. "It doesn't belong to anyone," she said, her voice steady despite the fear curling in her stomach. The leader's visor darkened. "You're in no position to negotiate." He raised his weapon, and the other agents followed suit, their targeting beams locking onto her. The child's glow intensified. The ripples of light on the wall spread outward, reaching the ceiling, the floor, the machines themselves. The rusted shelves trembled, their contents rattling as if the facility was waking up. Mira felt the shift in the air, a pressure building, something vast and unseen stirring beneath the surface. The child wasn't just a runaway. It was a force. The Dominion agents realized it too. One of them took a step back, his scanner buzzing with erratic readings. "Something's wrong," he muttered. "The entire room's energy field is destabilizing." The leader didn't flinch. "Contain it." The moment he gave the order, the agents raised their weapons, preparing to fire. But before they could, the child raised its hand. The console behind Mira exploded with light, and the tech bay was suddenly filled with a deep, resonant hum, like the echo of an ocean in motion. The ground beneath them trembled, and the walls began to pulse with energy, the old machines flickering to life as if remembering a forgotten directive. Mira barely had time to react before the child stepped forward, its eyes glowing like twin moons. The Dominion agents hesitated, their scanners overwhelmed by the sudden surge of power. The leader gritted his teeth. "This isn't possible," he muttered. "The Aegeon units were supposed to be neutralized." The child's voice, quiet but firm, filled the air. "I am not a unit." The words were spoken in Mira's language, but they carried weight far beyond mere speech. The console behind them displayed the same phrase, glowing in the same eerie light that pulsed from the child's body. The Dominion leader exhaled sharply. "Then you are a threat." He raised his weapon. Mira moved before she could think. She grabbed the child's wrist and yanked it behind her, shielding it with her own body. "You don't know what you're dealing with," she snapped. "You're not taking it." The leader's expression was unreadable behind his visor, but his voice was cold. "You're making a mistake." Mira's mind raced. She had no weapons, no way to fight them directly. But the child, Kael, was something else entirely. The way it had manipulated the machines, the way it had disrupted the Dominion scans, the way the facility itself seemed to respond to its presence. It wasn't just a being of unknown origin. It was a catalyst, a force that could reshape the very systems around it. And Mira had spent her life working with systems. She turned to Kael, her voice urgent but steady. "Can you control this place?" Kael's fingers twitched, its eyes flickering with understanding. It stepped forward, pressing its hand against the console. The entire tech bay shuddered, and the lights above them flared, casting long shadows across the walls. The Dominion agents staggered, their scanners going haywire, their visors flickering with static. The leader gritted his teeth. "Disruptor field," he growled. "It's rewriting the facility's energy output." Mira's heart pounded. "Then we need to use that." Kael's gaze met hers, and for the first time, it wasn't fear she saw in its expression. It was resolve. The child raised both hands, and the entire room responded. The rusted machines groaned as their circuits flared to life, the old power grid surging with a force that had been dormant for years. The Dominion agents raised their weapons, but the energy in the air was too much. Their targeting systems failed, their visors darkened, and the moment one of them tried to fire, the shot fizzled into nothing. Mira's breath caught as she realized the truth. The child wasn't just hiding. It was awakening something buried deep beneath the colony, something the Dominion had tried to contain and failed. And now, it was fighting back. The Dominion agents scrambled as the tech-based system surged with chaotic energy. Their weapons flickered uselessly, their visors darkened by interference, and the air itself seemed to pulse with something ancient and unseen. Mira didn't hesitate. She grabbed Kael's hand and pulled them both toward the far end of the chamber, where a rusted maintenance hatch led to an emergency tunnel. The leader of the Dominion recovered first, shouting over the noise. "Containment breach. Lock down the sector." A second agent tapped his wrist device, sending a command through the outpost's failing systems. The emergency doors began to slide shut. Mira sprinted forward, yanking Kael along. "Run!" she shouted. Kael obeyed, its small form moving with surprising speed. The child's bioluminescent skin pulsed in time with the energy coursing through the facility, as if the very walls were responding to its presence. The maintenance hatch was still open, but closing fast. Mira shoved Kael through first, then dove after him just as the metal slammed shut behind her. The sound of Dominion boots echoed in the corridor beyond, but for now, they were trapped on the other side. The tunnel was narrow, lined with rusted pipes and flickering emergency lights. Mira pulled Kael forward, her mind racing through the outpost layout. The only way out was through the old transport bay, where the colony's last functioning escape vessel remained, half buried in dust, but still operational if she could get it running. They emerged into the transport bay minutes later, breathless and drenched in sweat. The ship was a relic of the colony's final days, a small single-pilot craft that had never been used. Mira had spent years maintaining it, keeping it alive in case she ever needed to leave this place. And now, she did. She rushed to the control panel, her fingers flying across the interface. "This thing hasn't flown in years," she muttered, "but if I can get the engines online." Kael stepped beside her, pressing a hand against the console. The screen flickered, then stabilized. The ship's diagnostics, once corrupted, now displayed clearly. Mira turned to Kael, stunned. You're interfacing with it? Kael nodded, eyes glowing faintly. It remembers me. Mira didn't question it. She had seen enough to know that Kael wasn't just a child. It was something more, something tied to the very technology that had been built to contain it. And now, it was helping her override those same systems. She activated the launch sequence. The engines groaned in protest, but then, with a deep, resonant hum, they powered up. The ship's hatch slid open, revealing the dimly lit interior. Mira turned to Kael. We go now. Kael hesitated, its gaze flickering to the console. The Dominion would come. More of them. The child's expression darkened, as if it understood something she did not. Then the ship's controls flickered again, displaying a final message before the system stabilized. Destination. Aegeon's Reach. Mira frowned. Where's that? Kael looked up at her, its voice soft but certain. Home. She hesitated, then nodded. Then let's go. As they climbed into the vessel, the distant sound of metal groaning filled the air, the Dominion breaking through. Mira hit the launch controls, and the ship's engines roared to life, shaking dust from the walls as it lifted off. Through the viewport, she saw the outpost below, its lights flickering as Kael's energy spread through the facility like a forgotten memory returning. The Dominion had tried to control the child, to suppress what it was. But Kael wasn't just an experiment. It was the key to something far greater. And now, they were leaving this world behind, heading toward whatever lay beyond. The escape vessel cut through the atmosphere, its engines roaring as it ascended beyond the outpost's reach. Mira kept her hands steady on the controls, guiding the ship through the turbulence. But her mind was racing. Below them, the Dominion would be scrambling, trying to track their trajectory, sending out retrieval units, hunting for the child they had lost. But Kael had already rewritten the ship's systems, scrambling its signal, hiding their path in the vastness of space. Once they broke free of the planet's gravity, the vessel stabilized, its internal lights shifting from emergency red to a soft blue. Mira exhaled, finally allowing herself to breathe. She turned to Kael, who was seated near the console, eyes closed, hands resting on the ship's controls. The glow in its skin had dimmed, but its presence still pulsed through the vessel, as if the technology itself recognized its return. Kael opened its eyes and met her gaze. They will come, it said, voice quiet but certain. Mira nodded. I know. She glanced at the controls, at the destination still displayed on the screen. But we're not just running anymore, are we? Kael tilted its head, then placed its palm against the console. The ship responded instantly, shifting its course slightly, as if adjusting for something unseen. Aegeon's Reach is not just a place, Kael murmured. It is a memory, a beacon. Mira frowned. A beacon for what? Kael's expression darkened. For the others. She froze. Others? Kael nodded slowly. The Dominion believes they are gone. But they are not. They are scattered, hidden, waiting. Mira's pulse quickened. The Dominion had been hunting Kael. But if it was telling the truth, then this wasn't just about one lost child. It was about something far greater, something the Dominion had tried to erase. She turned back to the console, watching as Kael's fingers traced the interface. The ship's systems were shifting, adapting to something beyond human programming. Kael wasn't just guiding them to a destination, it was awakening something long buried. Mira swallowed hard. You're not just trying to go home, she realized. You're trying to find them. Kael looked up at her, its dark eyes filled with something deeper than fear. Determination. Yes. Mira exhaled, gripping the controls. Then I guess I'm coming with you. Kael blinked, surprised. You don't have to. Mira smiled faintly. I think I do. The ship adjusted its course, the stars ahead stretching into infinity. The Dominion would come. The hunters would follow. But Kael was no longer just a runaway. It was the last of its kind, and it was calling the others home. And Mira would be right beside it, ready for whatever waited beyond the stars.